In this session, we will learn how to apply advanced permissions to your wallboard portal. In Wallboard, we call this Teams. In our Adding New Users video, we discussed how roles impact what you can do in Wallboard. While roles are an important part to permissions, teams are equally important and control what you can see in Wallboard. Simply put, if you can't see something, then you can't access it or modify it, meaning you can use this to control what screens, contents, and files users are able to manage. Let's begin by taking a tour of our Wallboard portal so we know what we will be applying permissions to. We will first start out on the Devices page and click into the folders that we will be applying permissions to. In this case, we will be applying permissions for our Dallas and Houston users, since they both manage separate assets in our portal. We will also be applying permissions to the files in our portal, so we will view those as well. You will notice that each office has their own respective folders, just like with devices. Lastly, let's also review the contents that we will be applying permissions to. You will notice that each location has their own slides and playlist that we will be designating to each team. Before we can start creating our teams, we must first go into the Users menu found under Settings. We will want to review our current users and look at what role they have. If you want to apply permissions to a user, you must ensure that they are not given the administrator role. This is because administrators have access to every asset in the system, regardless of permissions. If you are an administrator yourself, you can always change this by selecting the Edit icon and adjusting their role. In this case, both of the users in our portal are technical managers, so we don't need to do anything else. Finally, it's time to add our first team. We can do this by selecting the Teams tab at the top of the Users panel. Because we haven't created any teams yet, this page will appear blank. So to get started, we must select the red plus icon in the center of the screen. In the pop-up, we will name our team Dallas and press Save. Now that we have added our Dallas team, we will show you the four main buttons for configuring your team: Set Members, Manage Devices, Manage Contents, and Manage Files. You will notice to the right there are other options, but these will not be needed for now. Let's start by selecting the Manage Devices button. When the pop-up appears, you will see all the devices in your portal. Mine are organized within groups, so I will click on the Dallas folder to show them. Before we can start selecting the devices this team will have access to, we must first be aware of the different permission levels. The three levels are No Access, Read Only, and Read and Write. In this case, I would like our Dallas team to be able to manage their own devices and assign content, so I will provide them with Read and Write access by selecting their device folder, as well as every device underneath it. Once complete, we will press the Save button. Next, we will select the Manage Contents button. This will allow us to limit what our Dallas users have access to. In addition to being able to manage their own screens, I'd also like for them to edit their own contents. Just like before, our contents are organized into folders, so we will select the Dallas folder to see them all. In this case, there are quite a few contents, so under the Read and Write column, I will click the Dallas folder. This will select them all. Once finished, I will press Save. Our last step will be selecting the files that our Dallas team has access to. This can be done by selecting Manage Files. We will repeat the same steps as we have done before by opening the Dallas folder and clicking it under the Read and Write column. Once finished, we will press the Save button. Now that we have finished assigning what devices, content, and files this team will have access to, we must now assign the users that will belong to this team, meaning when they log in, they will only be able to see the assets their team is assigned. We can do this by selecting the Set Members icon. This will open a pop-up where we will see both of our users. Since this is our Dallas team, we will select our Dallas user. Once they have been selected, we will press the Save button. To see our changes, let's log in as our Dallas user who was just assigned to the team. Now that we are logged in, Let's start by going into the Devices page. You will see that the Dallas user is now only able to see what they can manage, meaning that our team settings are only allowing them to see what is within their Dallas folders, whether they are in the Devices menu, Contents, or the File Manager. Applying permissions is often an overlooked feature of Wallboard, but when applied, this can often allow for more advanced workflows that make managing your signage significantly easier. Before we show you how to set up one of these workflow examples, let's cover some of the other team settings that you can apply to your portal. Now that we are logged back into our original account, let's discuss an important team setting that is often used and where you can find it. First, you can access your team's settings by clicking on the gear icon in the top right corner of the Teams menu. These settings define the rules for how teams work. In this case, I want users to only be able to see what they are assigned, so I will uncheck the top option that prevents users from seeing assets that are not assigned to anyone else. In many cases, it is recommended that you uncheck this option if you want to lock down your Wallboard portal. Once we are finished applying our changes, press the Save button. Now that we know how to set general team settings, I will repeat the same steps we did before, but this time for our Houston team. Now that I have created our Houston team, I will assign a user to it by selecting the Set Members icon. In the pop-up, I will select our Houston user and press Save. Remember that if I forgot to assign the user to the team, they would not see anything when they log in due to the team setting we applied in the previous step. Now that you have a better understanding of how Teams works in general, our final exercise for this session will involve setting up a workflow using teams and playlists. Oftentimes, users want to be able to merge multiple playlists together that are managed by different groups of users. For example, a playlist containing general announcements mandated by corporate, and a playlist containing upcoming events, employee photos, or assets that are managed by a specific location. In this case, we already created a playlist like this in our training session covering playlists. Let's view this now to get a better idea of what this looks like and how the playlist is set up. First, from the Devices menu, let me click into the Houston folder and you will see that I already have the playlist assigned. Next, let me click into the Contents menu and edit the playlist so we can view it. Once in the playlist, you will see that there are multiple corporate assets in the timeline, as well as another playlist that is managed by our Houston office. The playlist was set up this way because while our Houston team manages their own playlist, corporate is going to manage the playlist we are currently editing, and that is assigned to the screen, meaning despite Houston's playlist not being assigned to the screen directly, their assets will still play alongside the corporate assets. Ultimately, this gives Houston users the freedom to manage their own playlists while also giving corporate control over what is being shown on their screens. To set this up, navigate back to the Teams menu under Settings and Users. Once there, we now know that we need to configure a couple of things to achieve our workflow. First, since we already have the corporate playlist assigned to the screens, we need to prevent Houston users from assigning another playlist to them. This ensures that the Houston and corporate assets will continue to play together as set up in the corporate playlist. To configure this, we'll begin by selecting the Manage Devices icon. Once in the pop-up, we will click on the Houston folder and Control-click the checkbox under the I column. The I column means that once checked, an asset will be read-only. This allows users to only see the asset, not modify it. In our case, this will be perfect. Once finished, press the Save button. For our final step, we need to limit our Houston users so they can only edit their playlist. We will want to set it so they can see and preview the corporate playlist assigned to their screens, but they will not be able to modify it. As we mentioned previously, the corporate playlist is what merges both the Houston playlist and the assets corporate wants to display. To apply these settings, select the Manage Contents icon. Then click on the Houston folder to show its contents. You will see that we already have them set to read and write access. This is what we want. However, for the corporate playlist, we will only want to give read-only access. Once our changes are complete, we will press the Save button. Let's now log in as our Houston user to confirm that everything has been set up correctly. First, in the Devices menu, let's click into our Houston folder. Here you will see that our corporate content is assigned. However, when we try to right-click and assign a different content, you will see that we no longer have this option. Lastly, let's click into our Contents menu. You will immediately notice the corporate playlist, but when we try to right-click on it or modify it, we are unable to. However, if we try to do the same with our Houston playlist, you will see that we still have the red edit icon and are able to modify it. While this workflow may not be helpful for your specific scenario, we hope you have learned how teams work in Wallboard and how you can apply permissions based on your use case. Thanks for following along. We'll see you in the next one.